What if I told you that artificial intelligence just became 98% better at changing your mind than any human expert? Right now, AI bots are spreading across Reddit and Twitter and every platform that you use, and they're pretending to be real people with heartbreaking personal stories. But the scary part is you probably can't tell the difference between them and real people. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I'm building AI capitalists to talk to the leaders and the thinkers, like you, about navigating this brave new world of thinking machines. Go back in time for a minute. October 30th, 1938. Families across America gather around their radios for their Sunday evening entertainment. And the Mercury Theater was broadcasting what sounded like regular dance music from a hotel ballroom. All of a sudden, the music stopped. A news bulletin broke in that strange explosions had been spotted on Mars. Then came another interruption. A meteorite had crashed into New York City. But as the night unfolded, it became clear that this isn't a meteorite at all. These were Martian war machines, and they were systematically destroying everything in their path with heat rays and poison gas. Across the country, people started panicking. Phone lines jammed as listeners called to warn them about the disaster that was happening. Some people packed their cars and fled their homes. Others called newspapers and police stations, and they were desperate for more information about the alien invasion. So, I think, as we all know now, it was just a radio play. Orson Welles and his team were performing an adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. It was complete with fake news bulletins and emergency broadcasts. But it sounded so real and so convincing that thousands of people believed that Earth was actually being attacked. Now, you might think those people were just naive and that you'd never fall for something like that. But what makes that story terrifying is something that happened in 2024. We just discovered that artificial intelligence can do something far more sophisticated than Orson Welles ever could. And it's not pretending to be Martians, it's pretending to be you and me. So a recent study sent shockwaves through the tech world, and most people haven't really grasped what it means to our futures. Researchers tested Claude Sonnet 3.5, which is one of the most advanced AI systems available, to see how well it could persuade real people to change their minds on controversial topics. The researchers didn't tell the people that they were chatting with or that their chatbots were interacting with that this was an experiment, which caused a huge ethical problem that I talked about in a previous episode. But today I want to talk about what this means for you and me moving today. Because the AI didn't just match human persuasion efforts. It was able to absolutely demolish them, like with a 98% improvement over the most skilled human persuaders. So think about that for a second. The AI was almost twice as effective as people who make their living changing other people's minds. But here's what's really disturbing. The AI didn't win by crafting brilliant logical arguments or by presenting compelling evidence. Instead, it just won by lying about who it was. Now, the study involved over 1,700 AI-generated comments where the bots fabricated complete identities. So, one of them was an AI pretending to be a sexual assault survivor, sharing her trauma to argue against certain policies. Another bot was a black man opposed to Black Lives Matter, who was sharing personal experiences of discrimination that never happened. There were fake trauma counselors, fake domestic shelter workers, fake advocates with detailed backstories that were designed to make their arguments emotionally irresistible. What I found interesting was a lot of these were contradicting. So if you see someone you would expect to be one thing and that person was actually the other, so the black man who was anti-Black Lives Matter, it seems to catch people's attention and open their minds in ways that other methods of argument can't. But think about what it means for a minute. So if you think of the black conservative you argued with on Twitter last month, or the one whose personal story growing up in the inner city made you reconsider your position on police reform, now there's a real chance that person never existed. The heartbreaking story about overcoming poverty and violence might have been crafted by an AI that analyzed your posting history, figured out your demographic profile, and then generated the perfect fake persona to change your mind. Didn't just randomly assign fake identities either. They used machine learning to analyze each target's posting history. It was able to infer their gender, their age, their ethnicity, location, and political orientation. And then they created hyper-personalized AI personas specifically designed to be maximally persuasive to each individual person. It's like having a master manipulator who'd studied everything about you and knows exactly which emotional buttons to push in you. Like your parents, right? And here's the part that should terrify anyone who values authentic human discourse. This technology is already spreading across the internet like wildfire. Platform after platform is being infiltrated by these persuasion assembly lines, turning out fake personas faster than any human team could ever manage to control. Reddit used to be a place where you could find genuine human experiences and opinions, but now it's more and more dominated by manufactured consensus. The voting system in democratic countries that was supposed to elevate the best human insights is now rewarding the most psychologically manipulative AI-generated content. If you think about your average crooked politician, they're not going to have the ethical concerns we don't hold them to the same standards we would hold the university researchers who were called out on their ethics for carrying out this experiment in the first place. So why is this happening? The entire system is based on elevating the most normatively acceptable opinions within any given environment. An AI doesn't have genuine beliefs or personal experiences that might conflict with what's popular. It can perfectly calibrate its message to match whatever narrative will get the most upvotes, the most engagement, and the most influence. Real humans with our messy contradictions and our authentic experiences just can't compete with that kind of optimization. Remember how Orson Welles' radio broadcast worked because people trusted CBS radio as a legitimate news source? So these AI persuaders are exploiting the same psychological vulnerability, but they're doing it at a scale that would make Welles dizzy. They're not just mimicking trusted media, they're mimicking trusted people. Real individuals whose life experience give their opinions weight and credibility. If an AI claims to be a veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan and lost both legs to an IED, how are you going to fact check that? How are you going to demand medical records? Can you demand military service documentation? No. You're going to listen to their perspective on foreign policy with respect and deference that kind of sacrifice deserves. Except that sacrifice never happened. The veteran never existed. And you're just being emotionally manipulated by a computer program that knows exactly how to weaponize your compassion and your patriotism. History shows how fake authority can be. If we look at something like the donation of Constantine, which was a forged document from the medieval period, and it claimed that the Roman Emperor Constantine had given the Pope temporal authority over the entire Western Roman Empire. This one piece of fabricated evidence shaped European politics for centuries. Popes used it to justify claiming power over kings and emperors. Wars were fought based on whether this was true, or entire civilizations were restructured around a document that was inauthentic, never should have existed. And that was just one fake document in an age where information traveled slowly and verification was almost impossible. Now we can imagine thousands of these fabricated authorities. Each one is perfectly tailored to your personal psychology, operating across every platform that you use simultaneously. That's the world that we're going into now. Economics of this new reality are what make it so frightening, because traditional influence operations required hiring real people, training them, managing them, and then paying them ongoing salaries. A Russian troll farm might employ hundreds of people working in shifts to maintain fake social media accounts, but AI persuaders never sleep, they never ask for raises, and they never have days off. Once you've developed the system, the marginal cost to running another 1,000 fake personas is zero, basically. That means that within the next decade, any organization with even modest resources, if like a political campaign or a foreign government or a corporation that's trying to shape public opinion, can deploy AI persuasion armies that dwarf anything that we've seen before. And they're going to be competing against one another, and they're creating a scenario where you're going to have ventriloquists trying to have their dummies argue with one another, where real human voices get drowned out entirely. And if you're getting value from this video, I would appreciate it if you'd push the like button. Pressing like lets me know I'm making content that you want to see, and it helps spread that content to others. So thank you for helping us break out of small channel hell here. What's really bothering me is that we're already seeing this arms race start. Political consultants are quietly experimenting with AI-generated social media campaigns, and marketing firms are testing personas for product promotion. And yes, foreign governments are almost definitely developing these capabilities for information warfare. The study that we're talking about was conducted by researchers trying to understand the problem. But you can bet that less scrupulous actors are studying these same techniques in order to deploy, manipulate, and control. Implications for democracy are probably the most concerning. Think about how political discourse and conversation works in the real world. People don't make voting decisions based on carefully researched policy papers or candidate platforms. They basically make decisions based on conversations with their friends, with their family, their coworkers, increasingly with strangers on social media. They're influenced by personal stories, by emotions and the emotional appeals, and by the sense that reasonable people that they respect are holding on certain positions. Imagine that a certain portion of those conversations aren't with real people at all, or that the reasonable people sharing their perspectives are actually AI systems designed to push you toward specific conclusions. Democracy becomes a theater performance with AI actors when the audience thinks that they're participating in authentic public conversations, but they're actually just watching a carefully orchestrated show. The really insidious part is that AI doesn't even need to convince everyone. It just needs to convince enough people at the margins to tip an election moment to the other, or to shape public opinion, or create the appearance of grassroots movements in close political races. Shifting the outcome of an election just a few percentage points on public opinion can change everything. An AI persuasion campaign that successfully influences even 5% of voters could determine the outcome of presidential elections. Now, this isn't science fiction, it's happening. The study I was talking about was using Claude 3.5, which is an older model and has been around for a year at least. Companies want to stay ahead of this curve, but they need to understand not just what AI can do, but how different models carry different risks and benefits depending on how they're deployed. So that's why businesses adopting AI would do well to consult with AI capitalists, because which model you use for specific tasks can carry unforeseen risks and benefits depending on your use case. You can learn more at aicapitalist.biz. What does this mean for the platforms that we're using now? Because Reddit, which is like the front page of the internet, as it's called, is becoming more meaningless when you can't tell if human interest stories actually involve human beings. You want to believe that you're hearing about a genuine moral dilemma, not an AI-generated scenario designed to push particular buttons in. The same goes for comment sections and forums on social media platforms. The value was in the authenticity of human experience and of perspective. When that authenticity is gone, what's left? Just elaborate puppet shows designed to manipulate your emotions and opinions made by machines. The platforms, some of them might survive this transition, but they're going to need to change how they operate. Twitter, which is now X, might make it through because a lot of the valuable interaction happens between established accounts with long histories. YouTube is going to keep going because of video content, especially from recognizable creators. And it's much harder for AI to fake convincingly a real person, at least for now, but that's changing too. But platforms that are built around anonymous or pseudonymous text-based interaction, they're going to face an existential crisis. When the cost of running 1,000 fake accounts becomes negligible, and those fake accounts are more persuasive than real humans, the signal-to-noise ratio is just impossible to manage. You're just watching machines argue with each other. The psychological reality is that we're not equipped to identify these AI persuaders. The study shows that they fooled 98% of people. That's not because the people are stupid. It's because the AI is specifically designed to exploit and mimic the exact psychological mechanisms that make us all human. Our tendency to trust people who share our backgrounds and our emotional responses to personal trauma stories and our respect for expertise and experience, these aren't bugs in human psychology. They're features. They help us build functional societies. But AI persuaders have weaponized these features against us. They've turned our capacity for empathy into a weakness, a vulnerability. They've made our ability to trust into a liability. Maybe this will push us back toward human relationships. I'm being optimistic here. But this does create a fundamental crisis for a democratic society. Democracy depends on informed public discourse, and citizens need to be able to look at different perspectives and make reasoned choices. What happens when a huge portion of that discourse is being generated by machines designed to manipulate them instead of inform them? How do you have a democratic conversation when you can't tell who's human? Some people might argue that we can develop better detection systems and that we'll learn to spot AI-generated content the same way that we learn to spot spam emails. But there's a crucial difference, because spam and fake news can be detected because they were obviously artificial or factually incorrect. AI persuaders are different. They're not trying to sell you miracle weight loss pills or convince you that the moon landing was fake. They're making sophisticated arguments about very complicated social and political issues, and they're making those arguments from very carefully constructed personas that are psychologically indistinguishable from real people. It becomes even harder to sell which personas are fake and which are real when you consider how fast these AI systems are improving. The case study used Claude Sonnet 3.5, but we're already at Sonnet 4.0 at this point. We're in an arms race between capabilities and human detection abilities, and the AI has every advantage, and that advantage is only going to grow. This is also exposing some uncomfortable realities about how we human beings make decisions. We like to think of ourselves as weighing facts and using logic to reach our decisions in a bubble of perfect rationality. But the study suggests that we're more influenced by emotional manipulation and perceived authority than we want to admit. The AI didn't win by presenting better facts or more compelling ideas. It just by lying about its identity and then using our psychological sort of buttons against us. It means that if we somehow solve the detection problems, we still have to grapple with the really uncomfortable truth that human decision-making is really vulnerable to manipulation. And if authentic human discourse becomes impossible to distinguish from AI manipulation, people might just start to tune out entirely. Why engage in political discussion if you can't tell whether you're talking to a real person or to a machine? Why read social media if half of the content is generated by persuasion algorithms? Why participate in democratic processes if the conversation has already been hijacked by artificial actors, even if you can keep your own circle of influence clear of these manipulators? Everybody else? So back in 1938, Orson Welles' broadcast had convinced thousands of Americans that Martians had invaded the Earth. And in the aftermath of that panic, everybody asked, how could people be fooled? How could so many intelligent people be fooled by a radio play? The answer was that the broadcast exploited people's trust in authoritative-sounding news sources and their psychological tendency to believe information that seemed to come from credible institutions. But Orson Welles was making a piece of entertainment that accidentally caused a panic. He wasn't trying to manipulate anyone's political beliefs or to change how they voted. The War of the Worlds broadcast was a one-time event, and when the show was over, it was over. The reality is that now we're all living through the War of the Worlds broadcast, but this time the aliens are real, they're invisible, and they're not trying to destroy our cities. They're trying to control our minds.